IRB and clinical trials. What is a clinical trial? The National Institutes of Health define a clinical trial as a research study in which one or more human subjects are prospectively assigned to one or more interventions, which may include a placebo or other control, to evaluate the effects of those interventions on health-related biomedical or behavioral outcomes. So if you are conducting research and you are using human subjects, and you will be prospectively assigning those human subjects in advance to an intervention, whether it's an actual intervention, a placebo group, or a control group, and you are measuring a health-related outcome, whether that outcome is behavioral or biomedical, you are conducting a clinical trial. The next step is determine if you are completing an applicable clinical trial, or an ACT. The way that is determined is by looking at the following elements. The first one is jurisdiction. If your study is located in the US or in a US territory, or it will be conducted under an FDA investigational new drug application or investigational device exemption, and the study involves a drug, biological, or device that is manufactured or exported from the US and will be studied in another country, any of those elements can make sure that the United States does have jurisdiction and this is an applicable clinical trial. The next step is to check whether or not FDA approval is required. If the study evaluates a drug, a biological, or a device or product that is regulated by the FDA, this may also make this a clinical trial. There are certain additional protections for children. So if the study is a surveillance study of a post-market pediatric device, this may also be an applicable clinical trial. Sometimes people like to state that they're just testing to see if this device, drug, or biological works at all. If this is a study other than a phase 1 trial of a drug or a biological, or if the study is device feasibility trial, these are questions that must be answered as well to determine if this is an applicable clinical trial. There are other situations as well that would make something an applicable clinical trial, even if it didn't otherwise meet the criteria above. If the researcher is receiving National Institutes of Health funding, if the researcher is using FDA-regulated drugs, biologics, or devices, if the researcher plans to publish in the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors journals, and if the researcher would like to register voluntarily, these are all other situations in which an applicable clinical trial application might be submitted. Additional training is required for applicable clinical trials beyond the investigators and student researchers course that's required for all IRB applications. NIH-funded projects require responsible conduct of research, and clinical trials require good clinical practice. Compliance with applicable clinical trial requirements is necessary. Penalties can run upwards of $11,000 per day for noncompliance with federal requirements. Federal funding can be withheld, and the record can be recorded as noncompliant. Failure to comply can also be considered in future funding decisions. There can be the inability to publish in ICMJE journals. There are a number of important dates that the PI and the research team must know. Applicable clinical trials, ACTs, and NIH-funded trials are required to register on clinicaltrials.gov, preferably prior to enrolling any subjects, but at the very latest within 21 days of enrollment of the first subject. Throughout the life of the record, updates must be made anytime the study plan changes, typically within 30 days. Updates are required at least every 12 months, even if nothing has changed. So how do you start? Apply for a clinicaltrials.gov account by emailing irb@uidaho.edu. Include your study protocol name and IRB number. Then you will register the trial at clinicaltrials.gov, filling in a number of pieces of information that they will request. Finally, keep track of all the important dates and meet all of the deadlines that are required for an applicable clinical trial. If you have questions about this process, if you've never conducted an applicable clinical trial before, or if you just want additional information, please contact the IRB at uidaho.edu or at our phone number 208-885-6340. There's also additional information available on our webpage, but we're happy to help with any questions that you may have.